All
All
right.
right.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have George Petrilli and Carla Bailey-Smith talking about farming and rural issues. Please feel free to join us on Zoom. We can see your questions. I'm going to try to monitor Facebook as well to try to get those in. Or you can just message me the question as well. So, and I will hand it over to them.
Hi, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I asked George Petrilli to join me on this town hall to discuss farming and rural issues because George and I have a lot of square mileage in common. I'm running for state representative, which covers south and southwest McLean County, and then it kind of carves a path up through Tazewell County and includes Mackinac, Morton, and Washington, and Groveland, a little bit of East Pekin, and all the farmland in between. And all of that is George's congressional district in common. So we wanted to talk about some policies and services that affect our farmers and our rural residents. So thank you so much, George. And go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe give us a little personal connection to farming or rural
Sure.
life.
Certainly. So again, my name is George Petrilli. I'm the Democratic candidate for the 18th Congressional District of Illinois. That goes from really the west side of Springfield all the way west to Adams County, all the way to Quincy, includes Macomb, parts of Bloomington Normal area, and also Peoria. So it covers quite a bit an area with roughly 700 plus 770,000 people in it. A big part of that economy throughout central Illinois, and not just this district, but all over in southern Illinois, is agriculture. And I think from my experience, just born and raised here in central Illinois and schooling here and down in southern Illinois, it's a big part of what life is in central Illinois. So we need to make sure that we continue to make it sustainable for everyone who wants to continue to do it into the future, because farming is not just successive production of crops, but also more of a lifestyle and community. And we want to make sure that those communities stay intact. And that's really the experience and exposure that I have is in being friends with families that are from farming communities that are multi-generation farmers. And it's something that I want to do to help preserve that way of life, because I have such admiration for it and see the quality of people that are involved in those communities. And I get the experience to be out in those communities practicing law on a regular basis and traveling around. And I want to make sure some of the things that I see that are starting to affect those communities in a negative way, we need to stop and do what we can to help grow and build those economies again. So again, I'm not a farmer or from a farming family, but just from being in central Illinois, it's such a big part of life here.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of exposure to it and a lot of really positive experiences with it. So I'm here to do what I can to make sure that it continues.
Right. Okay, so two questions I thought of there. First, what kind of law do you practice? And then secondly, did you, as a teenager, ever do detasseling or any other kind of farm work like that?
Sure.
Did you get drawn into that?
So mainly I'm working litigation. So I go to court most days throughout central Illinois. I handle a docket of cases throughout what is really 94 counties in Illinois. And so I'm either in court or finding local attorneys to appear in court. So that's mainly what I do. And then I also have a practice of patent and intellectual property law that I work with small and startup companies to help them basically acquire intellectual property, patents, copyrights, and hopefully make those marketable and profitable. So I do a little bit of several different things, but I had the experience to do detasseling once.
Once?
And as a lot of young people, I did not take to it very quickly. So
right.
I did work out on a golf course that was adjacent to a farm, and every once in a while we would go out, and there was several occasions when I was in my teenage years that we would go and do that when they were shorthanded because the golf course owner and the farmer knew each other very well. So I did it several times, and it's hard work. And that's one of the things that all of farming is. And it's really an experience that I'm glad that I had for such a short period of time, because it teaches you what real hard work is. And for some people, it's not for everybody, but it's an experience for sure. And it's something everybody should really, you know, those are the kind of things, just being out and working
Mm-hmm.
hard really gives you an appreciation for people that do that every day and constantly and are a basis for our economy too. So it's
Yeah.
important work and hard work, and it's not for everybody. And it certainly wasn't for me that summer. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that, that opportunities to work on farms is something that I think if you have a chance to do it, you should try it. Just if nothing else, just to have an appreciation for how hard it is to do that work and how physical it is, and you know, how hard it is to work in the sunshine on those hot days. I did have an opportunity as a child to walk beans and pull corn out
oh
of the
yeah.
beans, and it was just on a family farm, a friend of the family, and I was staying with them during county fair time, and I wanted money for the county fair, but they weren't going to just give it to me. I had to earn it, and they had me walk beans. And I earned my county fair money. So
you
I know how hard that is, especially when
That's
you're a
well
little
earned.
kid and you're trying to pull a corn
Oh
stalk
yeah.
out. All right. So now I did want to mention that campaigning during during a pandemic is very difficult, and we're doing our best to reach out to people. And I know that I've sent postcards to a lot of rural residents, and I have actually had one call me back because they got a postcard, and I've started making phone calls, and I had one really great conversation the other day, and got a lot of really great questions and really great input. And I wondered, George, if you've had an opportunity since you've been running for Congress to talk to any farmers about their concerns.
I have a number of times, yeah, and that's something that I seek out too, because like I
Hmm.
said, it's such a big part of the economy, and what farmers have faced over the last few years has been very, very difficult. One of the things that I constantly hear, and we all have different views and opinions on how best to proceed with policies and stuff in the future,
Hmm.
but the consistent note that I get from people is they want stability. They want to be able to have confidence in the future. They want to be able to
Hmm.
understand that what they do and their way of life is going to be sustainable and is going to be there for their kids if their kids want to do it, or for them even for the rest of their working life. So again, the one constant that we need to, especially in policy at the federal level, is to provide a level of consistency through our policies, and that includes all of trade agreements,
Hmm.
regulations. It also goes into immigration and status of farm workers. So there's a lot of issues that need to be to remain stable for all this stuff to work well and for farmers to have the confidence of it. I asked them, I mean, a lot of farmers are traditionally Republican voters and supporters of the Trump administration in the past. And I asked them all the time, how confident are you, as far as not just the most recent trade and agricultural issues have come up, but the COVID crisis, and in the future, how confident are you that what you're going to do right now is going to be sustainable in the future? And a lot of them, I think, have very serious concerns about that. And again, the instability of pricing and the instability of trade is one of
Hmm.
the bigger problems that really need to be handled, and very soon, because it's the smaller farmers, it's the family farmers who can't absorb this inconsistency. And
Right.
that is, large commercial farms seem to be able to now start to consolidate farms. And then you start to get questions too, as we see consolidation in farms and also in the marketplace for cattle and for pork, is now is competition becoming less and less to an effect, where you start to see some antitrust issues, and you start to see manipulation of markets, and our small farmers really being able to be competitive when we have all of the trade imbalances that we have and the imbalance in the markets that we have. So we need to really provide stability, especially on the
Hmm.
federal level, to agriculture right now.
Right. Right. So
Carla, I'm sorry to bug for a minute. We
yeah,
had a
you have
really great question.
great. Thanks.
Um, she wanted to ask, how do you plan to approach your opponent's claim that the current administration has helped farmers? That's from Joyce Blumenschein. So
Okay, so you're saying that uh, the current the current administration has helped farmers.
They're saying they did. So I would wonder how you both would respond to that.
Sure, and I think you need to look at it from a couple different levels. Has some of their policies helped agriculture, or have they helped all farmers? Because those are two very different things. I mean, large commercial farms operate very differently than family-owned farms. And from what I understand, from what I hear, this market instability is crippling small farms, and it might even be an advantage to larger farms. So we need to differentiate who exactly is agriculture. When we talk about agriculture, who are we talking about? So as far as the claim that they've helped farmers, the first question I ask is, how confident are they about the future? And when you don't have confidence in the market, you don't have confidence in an administration or in policies, in the ability of regulation and how that's going to be enforced, all of those things show that whether on a short-term basis, if you feel like you've been helped, if you don't have the confidence in the future, you're not being helped fully. And like I said, some of these policies are actually helping large farms and not small farms. I mean, we have farming prices right now, and we can talk about how that was affected by COVID, but we have farming prices right now that almost make farming unsustainable. And so how long can that go on? And how long can we continue to try to interrupt trade agreements, which have made farming profitable? Even if we want to try to renegotiate those to get a better deal for farmers and for America, we need to have policies in place that hold stability over a number of years. And so again, to counter that, I would say you ask farmers directly, and not just large farms and not just large farming associations that say everything's going well. It's not going well if you ask some of the farmers that have gone bankrupt over the last couple of years, and those numbers continue to increase, not to the levels they were when we have all the issues in the 1980s and that era, but when we have small farms, when we have multi-generation families going out of business because of what's going on right now with uncertainty in the markets, that's not helping farmers. And again, beyond that is what do our rural communities look like? So as you see consolidation of farms and large farms maybe being successful and making money, you begin to see rural communities begin to crumble. People can't they can't live and work there. We see people have to move out in order to have jobs. We start to see in those rural communities, you see less and less access to healthcare. So whether farming is more successful, or if you talk about general GDP prices or how much is exporting, you need to know how much is that is actually affecting family farms and not just the farming overall, the larger figure in that. So from what I hear from farmers, again, the policies that are going on right now are not going to help in the future, and the instability is going to drive a number of them out of what is an outstanding and has been a family and lifestyle for generations to come. So, I mean, we can begin to pick apart and talk about numbers and figures and economics, but a lot of that, you can have that manipulated either way. So you go directly to farmers and say, how do you feel about the current environment? How do you feel about the current economy of farming? And are you confident that you're going to be here in 5 years and 10 years, or for your children to do it? So again, the understanding that I get from farmers, and the reason why I'm here, the rural communities I visit, you can see that when you visit them, you can see what's going on in those economies. You can see that there's no growth, and in fact, there's a decline in the ability to live and work there.
Right. Yeah. Before the pandemic, I was fortunate to attend a rural roundtable in Delavan, which is not actually in my district, but it is in Tazewell County. It's probably quite possibly in your district, George.
Yeah.
And some of the residents of Delavan were a couple of very important things that they brought up, is that there's no childcare, there's no school right there in town, there's no grocery store. So all of these, when these things happen to our rural towns, it's devastating. It's really devastating. It's hard to stay there when you have to drive 45 minutes to an hour just to get milk and bread. So those are, and we brainstormed, we talked about a lot of different ways that could be addressed, and those are at the local and state level, not so much at the federal level, but definitely the subsidies are a federal level issue. And even though I know, and I don't want to slam our commodity crop and commercial farmers because they certainly provide an economic value to our area. But on the other hand, unfortunately, what they've done is very similar to what companies like Walmart have done to our downtowns. It's the same kind of cycle. And fixing that cycle and regenerate, just like we know how much work it takes to regenerate a downtown that has been drained of all of its small businesses because of a Walmart. It takes a lot of time and a lot of community conversations and brainstorming about how to make those positive changes. So George, I do want to ask about subsidies, and if you have looked at that topic specifically about who's getting the subsidies, and about also, I'm very concerned that personally that subsidies are really just propping up commodity crops, and they're not really helping people to diversify their crops. They don't encourage diversification.
Sure. No, I think subsidies and as they've been operated have a place in the whole sphere of agriculture and the economy that's regulated at the federal level. But I think what we have talked about, I think briefly, and one of the things that we also need to highlight is providing subsidies for diversity of crops, and especially when we talk about access in rural areas, and even in the rural areas that would provide urban areas around them, is a diversity of crops to provide the food in a local area in a sustainable way that allows farmers to get away from commodity farming, and also begins to stimulate that economy, because when you do the specialization of that, you could do it on a smaller level, and it gives farmers the ability and the flexibility to kind of grow a variety of crops rather than one or two value producing crops that have that subsidy. So they definitely have a place, and they're certainly important to maintain the profitability of those crops and those sustainability of those prices that are necessities. But we also need to see what we can do to provide the flexibility to farmers for them to be able to choose what they want to grow and what the local area would demand. And part of that too also starts to roll into our policy as far as climate change and also efficiency of the markets. If we can grow more of our food in a local area and support that, we might, I mean, to me, from what I have seen economically, it can save money, especially for the cost of pollution for transportation of our apples in Illinois don't necessarily need to come from Washington State. So they can come from local farms around Illinois. If we have farmers that are encouraged to do that, we get really a better product because it doesn't have to be shipped prior to being ripened. It can spend a longer time growing. We can have it, we can have the money stay within the local economy, and we can have farmers begin to choose products that they provide directly to consumers, or at least in that direct area. And part of that too, I think you see will provide to urban areas where a lot of times you'll see these oases of fresh fruits and vegetables within grocery stores and with urban areas, and especially in lower income neighborhoods that we see. And this is in rural areas as well. I mean, when we are growing essentially our crops for the world surrounding a rural area that doesn't have fresh fruits and vegetables for dozens and dozens of miles. So that right there, I think, shows you that the farming policies aren't really serving the communities around it. And we need to make sure that we can try to expand that to encourage that all of those things can also be produced and providing to the communities locally. So subsidies certainly have a place, but I think we need to look at how we're using them and how we can utilize them in different ways in those areas.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That's great. I'm just going to check in with Blair real quick and see if there's any comments that we should address on the Facebook Live.
We actually do. And well, really it's just comment. They really appreciate